Good morning. Talking about Jesus wept. Jesus wept. We've been covering some stuff about believers and the destiny of believers and what they have to face among other believers and within the church. But let's roll back a minute and realize that here was Jesus, a man, quote unquote, acquainted with grief, according to Isaiah 53, man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, who had been despised and rejected by his own. And here he was as an outlaw, as a hunted man coming to visit the grave of a friend. And word had gotten to him that Lazarus, brother beloved, had fallen ill. The mystery of this narrative that occurs in John chapter 11 is that Jesus does not immediately go to the rescue of brother Lazarus. This isn't like the early part of Mark where Jesus jumps up and runs and gets to and goes to the aid of Peter's mother-in-law. This isn't like the part where the centurion asked Jesus, could he go and pray or lay hands or do something that he could do to raise his daughter from the dead. This isn't one of those things where Jesus got up and got on the way immediately. And you would think, based upon relationship, if he got up for anybody, he would have got up for Lazarus. If he got up for anybody, he would have got up because he got a letter from Mary and Martha. But somehow that all was on a delay. And even though the letter said, he whom you love is sick. He whom you love is ill. He whom you love is dying. Jesus didn't move. He waited, he delayed. And what we see in this is when he was on his way, right? When he was on his way. That's all it took. Martha Martha was going to meet him, right? Martha was going to meet him, right? And if we look at verse 5, that gives us a synopsis of the relationship that Jesus had with Mary and Martha. If we look at John 11, verse 5, it just gives us a simple synopsis of the relationship that Jesus had with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. He says it like this. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Loved them, spent time with them, enjoyed sharing in their company, and still hadn't made a move. Still hadn't made a move. And so by the time Jesus makes a move, and Thomas has protested and said, well, man, if he's dead, we all might as well go and die. Right? Because when they arrive, in verse 17, when they arrive, Lazarus is already in the tomb 4 days. Not that he was sick, still Lazarus has already died and is in the tomb 4 days. And Bethany was only so far away. You know what I mean? And here it is. Jesus has allowed time to pass, and his friend has died and has been buried 4 days. So now we've got this thing with Jewish tradition, right? Jewish tradition says the spirit still hovers over the grave through day 3. There's still a chance that he can arise on day 3. But when you show up on day 4, no go. And so Jesus has presented an opportunity against all obstacles. He's facing Jewish custom. He died, and we wrapped him up, settled him in, mummified him, and he's in the grave. Right? We did all the stuff we were supposed to do according to Jewish tradition, and he's in the grave, brother. And we're just hitting up the last bit of the mourning and lament for brother Lazarus right now. Jesus is facing the customs that are still out there, the beliefs of Jews. Remember, the Jews also had a sector of believers that are called mystics, who believed in mysticism and numerology and all these different things. And so once we pass 3, the spirit is gone. And we're in day 4. So this is into some holy stuff that even the observers are saying, what's this guy going to do now? Because I thought that was his friend. Look at it. When he meets Mary, he meets Martha on the road. Martha doesn't even let him get in town good. She meets him on the road. And it says there were many Jews who were there consoling Mary and Martha about their brother. But when Martha heard that he was coming, she went out and met him. Mary remained in the house. And when Martha got to him in verse 21, she said, Lord, if you had been here, come on. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Martha is pushing into an area where many of us who would have been around may not have urged and implored Jesus. Say, hey, I know if you ask, God will give it to you. So even though my brother's gone, I know you can get it from God. But if you had been here, he wouldn't have died. Right? The proximity of Jesus, the presence of Jesus, the belief that the spirit can't be omnipresent, that's part of what Martha was pushing against. That Jesus had to be there. He had to see him, he had to be by his bedside. But she also knows on the other side of that, Jesus has a connection with God to where he can get and receive what many of us can't, simply by him asking. And Jesus just responds, well, your brother will rise again. And then there's this conversation about the last days. This thing about the last days, the resurrection. And when we talk about the resurrection in this context, the understanding and beliefs of many people when it comes to death, even in Christendom, is totally off. Totally off. And we can be using some of the same words and we're not saying the same thing. We're using some of the same labels and we're not saying the same thing. Jesus is saying, yeah, your brother's going to rise again. He's not promising during the last days, right? He's just saying your brother's going to rise again. But Martha exhorts her theological perspective that she will see him again in the resurrection on the last day. And Jesus says, hey, wait a minute. I am the resurrection. Who you think you're talking to? What you think we're talking about? I am the resurrection. And in fact, I am the resurrection and the life. Come on. Who do you think you're talking to? Come on. We can think about it and think that we're on the right track theologically, and the truth is the truth. The truth is the truth. Heaven doesn't open up until when? The trumpet doesn't sound until when? In order for the thing to open up, the dead in Christ must do what? Come on. And Paul told him. He told him in the letter, I don't want y'all to be fooled. But we still up here talking about everybody's in a better place. Everybody hasn't made it there. If the dead in Christ haven't risen yet, which would, you can't be both. Ooh, God help me. God help me. We have to dig into that deeper. But Jesus was saying, hey, look, what you're talking about is what these other folks have told you, but I'm him. That's me. I am the resurrection. And I'm the life. And I don't know what else, but he says, those who believe in me, though they die, yet they'll live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe in this? Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God who is coming into the world. That's what she says. That's what she says. And so when they get there, and Mary comes and she falls at his feet. Here we go again. Verse 32. Lord, if you had been here, right, my brother would not have died. The belief, the faulty belief that Jesus has to be there, be in the spot, be in the place, is a faulty belief of what has already been exhibited through his ministry previously, but is a faulty belief that there is no omnipresence of God. It's a faulty belief that there is a requirement that God be right there in order to make it happen. This is why Jesus said, this generation requires wonders and signs because of their faulty belief. Come on, listen. The idea that not only you would rise again in the resurrection, but in order for there to be a resurrection of someone who was passed immediately there next to us, had been exemplified by the prophet before by laying upon the child and breathing into them and doing all these different things. Those were about being in proximity because God was working through someone else. But when it's God himself, does he have to be there? Does he have to be in the place? Or is God's spirit enough? And so we have these faulty beliefs and these superstitions that come into play because we don't believe. It's not believed that God can do it without being right there in the spot. Help us today. Lord, help us today. We let's look at this in another way. So when we listen to this, when Jesus saw her weeping, verse 33, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in the spirit and greatly troubled. Right? A whole lot of theological interpreters and commentators will dig in right there and say, see, this is the buildup that's leading to Jesus's emotional breakdown. It says, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. Him being moved in his spirit, right? What could that mean? Well, he can have compassion on her. What did verse 5 say? Go back to what I said verse 5 said. Verse 5 said, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So you've got someone that you love before you at your feet crying to, man, if you had been here. This is the second one, the second encounter of the sisters that you love and are locked in this friendship with. And yeah, it's going to touch you. It's going to touch you. And so Jesus was moved by that. And then he sees all these people out here, clamoring and trying to support them. And, oh, man, and he's troubled because some of the stuff that is going on in the midst of all that, in the midst of the crowd, in the midst of this quote unquote celebration of life is wrong. Some of it is wrong. And God's usage of Lazarus is going to prove that. The faulty beliefs, the misunderstandings, the superstitions, the stuff that's just customary to us as people. Jesus says it like this. Whew. Where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. So the Jews, talking about those in the crowd, said, see how he loved him? See, there it is. He broke down. See how he loved him? Look at him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? Right? It's going in the crowd. It's part of the crowd. Part of the crowd is saying this, and that there's some sensationalism, right, about what's happening or what should happen, what should have taken place, what he should have done as a friend who loved Lazarus, right? There's some suspicious stuff that's being said and all this other stuff. And then Jesus once again is moved with this compassion and emotion. Jesus, once again, is touched. It says he was deeply moved again and came to the tomb. It was a cave and a stone lay against it. And Jesus said, take away the stone. Now, Martha, here we go. Remember, she was the first one to get in the face of Jesus, per se. Martha said, Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days. So we're thinking of the stench of what happens as the body begins to decay. We're thinking of the odor that is emitted when the body has been contained in a place and that thing is unleashed. That's what her fear is. It's enough to wipe out some folks and have some people leave this place. Now Jesus just goes ahead and gets real with her. Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? Remember, he said your brother will rise again. Now he's comparing that to the glory of God. And he's not saying it to the group, he's saying it to her. Look, did I not tell you if you believed, you would see the glory of God? Now, there's got to be a gap between 40 and 41 in this verse, even the way John wrote it. Because she had to give them the directive to move that thing. As the family, she had to give them the directive to move that thing. Because in 41 it says, so they took away the stone. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. Right? I knew that you always hear me. But I said on this account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The major point of it is in verse 42. I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me. Come on. He calls for Lazarus to come out. And in verse 44, what you say? The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face was wrapped with cloth. Jesus said to them, unbind him, let him go. Now here's the part that gets dangerous. Here's the part that gets dangerous. Here's the part where it can get a little wicked. And it can get away from folks. And folks might get stuck in their prior theology. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him. Come on. Wasn't that the point? That those who were around would come to believe in him? But some of them, here we go. But some of them, talking about people who were supposed to be supporting and consoling the grieving, but some of them, talking about people who were supposed to be there to help those who were mourning and dealing with their grief and bereavement, but some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and Pharisees gathered the council and said, "What are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, nor that the whole nation should perish." He did not say this of his own accord, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation. And not for the nation only, but also to gather into one of the children of God who are scattered abroad. So from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. And what makes it really dangerous is that the miracle lived on because turn to chapter 12. Turn to chapter 12. And we can see it early on. 6 days before Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at a table. Wow. Look at verse 9. Verse 9 to 11 in chapter 12. When the large crowd of Jews learned that Jesus was there, they came, not only on account of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to put Lazarus to death as well, because on account of him, many of the Jews were going away and believing in Jesus. You have the miracle raised from the dead, hanging out with the miracle worker and those who are part of his entourage in the city where he performed the miracle, where people could come and say, that's where they're at right now. They're hanging out, they're eating dinner together, they're fellowshipping, and that's the one who was dead. What does the prodigal son say? What's the proclamation of the father of the prodigal son? My son who was dead is now come back. What do we do with this? Well, what we realize is that the false beliefs, the unbelief, the customs, the misunderstandings, the mislabeling, they all can get in the way of the truth. And the truth, when it comes to our theological study, is going deeper than the surface. It's going beyond just skimming and seeing the words. How are we connecting the words and connecting the words to the entire story? Jesus' proclamation of, I am the resurrection, makes a difference in this text. Jesus' proclamation of, you will see the glory of God if you believe. You'll witness it. You'll be a witness of it. But you've got to believe. Walk away from it with this. Everyone around you may have their own idea about God, but the best way that you're going to know is to dig into the text. Come to know God for yourself. See what God is saying through his word. Get involved with some other folks in Bible study, theological study, and dig deep into this thing and pray over it, soak it down with prayer, and study to show thyself approved. That's the best cure for unbelief and misunderstanding I know. Dig in it, continue with it, and stick with it until you come across it in a manner to where you can say, okay, that's where we need to be, right there. God be with you. God bless you. I trust this is going to be a great week for you, new month, and everything to go along with it. But I want you to have it and enjoy it, embrace it, take it for all of what it is. Remember, Jesus wept, but he didn't give up hope. Remember, Jesus wept, but he didn't fall asleep on the job. God bless.